composition of Greenland's budget, which we have found to be problematic. We decided to reduce the budget for both social policy and defense. Due to the aggravating situation that the world faces, it's not strategic to maintain a strong army with an intention to counterattack, as we would not have the capabilities to manage more unrest. As for social policies, we intend to increase the self-reliance of citizens, where people do not free-ride the system. We have opted to dismantle any pension and health provision services by the government and to use the money on the future development of Greenland and policies that are more targeted and efficient at solving climate change. We have decided to intensify the government budget for healthcare, law and order, energy, education, and infrastructure. As for education, energy, and infrastructure, their budget will be significantly increased to build a strong basis for the transition of Greenland into a country that is more technologically advanced and environmentally sustainable economy. Further explanation on how we intend to do it will be explained by the following policies and innovations. With the renewal of the social welfare system in place, we aim to be a just nation where all citizens are to be cared for. Policies will be put in place to make sure that hardship is suffered proportionally across the social ladder. The tiered social spending system, where only a portion of the bill is subsidized, is meant to make individuals self-reliant because of co-payment. This aims to encourage the individuals to take care of themselves, and there are opportunity costs for a Greenlander if he or she engages in unhealthy slash risky events as compared to a flat subsidy. Those above the average income will not receive any subsidy as the subsidy is aimed at citizens who have trouble meeting necessary needs. We also plan for vouchers for the lowest 20% income earners for utility, transport, or daily necessity bills or any payment that every household will be required to pay, ensuring that the money is pumped back into the economy, increasing the money multiplier. Policy 3 is an umbrella policy for a happy and healthy Greenland. It centers itself around human and public capital development. Firstly, tuition subsidies will be granted for those enrolling in medical training courses, inclusive of nursing and psychology. This will encourage more citizens, thereby increasing and strengthening Greenland's healthcare facilities. A mandatory happiness curriculum in schools will also be implemented. This will involve taking time out for meditation, mindfulness, and be conducted by trained experts. This will encourage a culture of mindfulness and reduce anxiety, depression, and other illnesses which often take onset in adolescence.
Okay, thank you. So I will be carrying on for policy 4. Okay. Policy 4 is an umbrella policy known as the Green Transport Initiative. It encompasses 4 sub-schemes within it. Firstly, the diesel tax. So simply put, it is a tax on purchase of diesel, making it a proportional tax rather than a lump sum one. This policy based on the law of demand will serve to de-incentivize citizens from purchasing diesel and diesel vehicles. Secondly, the odd-even vehicle policy will demand vehicles with odd number plates to operate on Greenland roads only on certain days of the week, and vice versa for the even number plate vehicles. This will serve to minimize vehicle traffic, encourage carpool and public transport usage, and limit air pollution. Thirdly, we have public-private partnerships. Private companies operating green technology for transport will be invited to collaborate with the Greenland government to build public transport in Greenland. The government could use a build, own, operate model to incentivize private collaboration. Lastly, subsidies for domestic and foreign green technology firms, for instance, electric cars, could be granted to create a green culture in Greenland, in Greenland and also incentivize such foreign firms to invest in Greenland, making it a marketplace for sustainable products. We are proposing a new plantation policy as our 5th policy. A 15% property tax rebate will be offered for private-owned lands, which cover 30% of their land area with some vegetation. This will be funded from the income earned from diesel tax and other fines. This afforestation will encourage eco-friendly culture and reduce air pollution. All public, i.e. state-owned institutions, inclusive of schools, hospitals, etc., will be mandated to plant at least 100 air purifying plants every 6 months. Otherwise, a fine will be charged to the institution by the central government. Plants can vary in size, and case-to-case appeal will be entertained if short on land area or there are sufficient funds to do so. For the next policies 6 and 7, let us look at the umbrella term of education. Firstly, it by employing experienced educators from OECD countries, also known as developed countries, to improve on the current education infrastructure, which Greenland lacks. Furthermore, we want to put forth the provision of scholarships or bursaries for foreign education opportunities, aiming to provide these opportunities for locals to go to OECD countries to gain experience on how foreign firms and government works. By doing so, it enables these scholars to bring back critical information to help improve various industries across the country. Next, by having a green-focused education development from young, Policy 7 hopes to inform the population on basic pollution knowledge, such as the impacts of burning raw coal versus briquette coal. Furthermore, providing incentives for scholars in Greenland will be tasked with the future development of green technology to benefit the environment of Greenland in the future. This policy aims to provide the basis of development into the tertiary as well as the quaternary industries. Thank you.
Thank you, Yu-Hui. Moving on to Policy 8, we planned to develop industries that aimed to achieve carbon neutrality in Greenland. Via green tax relief, stringent policies to adhere to green laws and subsidies, we hope to convert our current industries to greener ones. This is to adhere to the Daejeon Protocol, hoping via this compromise with other countries, developed countries will be willing to transfer over new green technologies over to Greenland at a subsidized rate. Lastly, regarding efficient energy production, we hope to fix the problems of energy production and consumption that Greenland has always faced. Instead of depending on coal, we'll progressively adopt cleaner energy alternatives and cleaner filters despite the increased costs. Another term we would like to address is agriculture reforms. Similar to education, we have three main policies targeted at reforming the agriculture sector in order to alleviate the problem of hunger in Greenland. Firstly, policy 9 would be water and soil management policies that are aimed to allocate land suitable for farming to farmers. This is where the government uses soil management to prepare areas for cultivation and areas for resting to improve the arability and overall output of the land while reducing soil pollution. Secondly, policy 10 would be to promote the selective breeding of crops. This is where crops are bred to achieve greater immunity to temperature changes, pest resistance, and having greater yield. By promoting selective breeding, it encourages farmers to utilize lesser pollution, especially if the crop becomes more resilient to droughts and require less water to grow. Lastly, our policy then would be to focus on agriculture adaptation. Certain crops such as potatoes and soybean tend to be less susceptible to climate change and can grow in a wider array of climates. As such, by promoting agriculture adaptations, we hope to push the policy to reduce the dependence on local species that might be less effective to grow in the region. All in all, our policies crafted are meant to tackle the dreadful situation, with each policy supporting one another. We believe that only such drastic changes are required, considering how severe the climate has deteriorated. I'll pass my time over to Yu Hui.
Sorry, let me start again. Thank you, Kieran. So next, we will be talking about the new innovations we came up with to benefit Greenland. Firstly, to reusing heat from factories. Secondly, creating a tidal barrage. And lastly, integrating AI in the power grid. So the rechanneling of heat tackles the problem of waste heat energy dissipated from the excessive burning of coal for electricity, which then leads to air pollution. Rechanneling this heat that is being released through underground tubings to and other smaller factories can save a great deal of money. Not only that, the energy from burning coal is fully utilized, and this minimizes waste energy and hence also reduces the volume of pollutants released in the air. It is desirable as citizens of Greenland definitely do require heating and heat the water due to the average temperature of Greenland being 16 degrees Celsius. We can only assume that the temperature dips exponentially in the night and hence further justifies the need for this heat source. Coincidentally, the government will be able to lower the amount of carbon emissions and satisfies the need of both the citizens and itself. The next one, the tidal barrage, it tackles the problem of high carbon emission from burning of coal and petroleum. Furthermore, Greenland struggles with the problem of submerged land due to rising sea levels. The tidal barrage is an effective solution as not only does it give an alternative source of energy, which is clean and sustainable, as well, it also makes sense due to the abundance of sea that is available near Greenland. The, uh, the barrage also acts as a dam so that the amount of seawater flowing into the accordingly. When observed carefully, there is a tiny part of land at the bottom right of Greenland, which is not within the zone of the proposed tidal barrage area. This area is reserved for activities such as fishing or any maritime trade. The reason why this area in particular was chosen is because it is the area of land that is least affected by rising sea levels. How the tidal barrage works is quite similar to the ones in South Korea. The Siwa Lake Tidal Power Station. To put it simply, energy is being harnessed from the movement of waves through tidal turbines located at the base of the barrage. Flooding can be controlled through the opening and closing of gates that are built into the walls of the barrage. Another innovation we propose is to increase the efficiency of thermal power plants by integrating AI in power plants with its power to cut energy waste and lower energy costs. We would be able to increase or reduce energy generation in response to real-time demand, improving flexibility, capacity, and efficiency within emission limits, as well as improving the machine lifespan. Fault prediction, along with real-time maintenance and identification of ideal maintenance schedule, can be realized with AI. This eliminates downtime and unplanned shutdowns of power plant. AI will also be able to predict the weather and accommodate shortages at unstable renewable plants ahead of time, and this can bring about significant savings for the customer. Next in the line, we could also introduce smart meters that learn how much energy is used by major facilities. Artificial intelligence is used in the control center to identify unusual patterns relative to customer profiles to detect informal connections as well as billing errors. On the other hand, we could combine the customer's preferences and consumption data to provide recommendations for the most suitable electricity supply deal. We also expect the effect of encouraging of the
Could you
accommodations for
presentation? Could you please wind up the presentation? The time lapse.
Okay.
Okay, this concludes our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you. And now we will move on to the next team to present their proposed solution to us, which would be race against the fuels. I'd once again Pioneers 2071 share screen on the view options up above.
Uh,
Yeah, you may start your presentation.
excuse me, can you hear me good, sir?
Uh, yeah,
Okay, okay,
can you switch to the Pioneers 2071 view from the view options?
okay, sir. I'm from the Race Against the Fuels. Would like to present. Can you see the share screen and can you hear me good?
Uh, there's a technical issue right now. I need you to change your view from view options to Pioneers 2071 share screen. Yeah, that's better. Now you can start.
Okay, thank you for the confirmation, sir. Good morning, hello, dear judges. We're from Race Against the Fuels. Now, would like to present our findings regarding agri-enviro Greenland. Here's our team member, and let's start with the discussion.
The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. We believe that the prerequisite
Excuse
to
me,
having.
sorry for interjecting again. Can you speak a
Yes.
little louder? Your voice is
Oh,
inaudible.
okay. Am I audible? More audible now?
It's very low.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. We believe that the prerequisite to having social welfare is that our citizens will have a planet to live in. Citizens of Greatland and the world are suffering from the negative effects of climate change, ranging from sinking cities to social discrepancy. Meanwhile, the government is also facing international pressure to lower their carbon emission rates. The main point of contention regarding the implementation of sustainability is regarding the economics and the environment, wherein most people think that we must prioritize one over the other. But what if we told you that both economics and environment, as well as social aspects, can synergize through policy? The policies we created are based on three main principles. First, circular economy. Second, the EMFW urban nexus. And third, the government incentives to renewable energy. Building off the Daejeon Protocol, we are creating policies that target the specific problems of Greenland. Firstly, regarding the principle of circular economy. The first law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created or destroyed in a system. The current status quo of linear economy is unsustainable because it produces energy wastage. By implementing circular economy, we are designing out the waste and the pollution and reutilizing them as raw material. While ensuring that the economy is still at scale. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please. The slide before, thank you. Next is the EMFW Urban Nexus, in which we state our policies based on the four pillars of life, which is energy, water, food, and waste. According to Greenland's data, the rate of decrease of farmland is continuing to decrease. Meanwhile, the urban areas are continuing to increase. Therefore, we have to adapt and transition to apply sustainability in urban areas. EMFW Urban Nexus works together between different sectors and technical domains to increase institutional performance, optimize resource management, and service quality. This principle works together with our principle of circular economy in order to recover as much waste as possible. Next slide, please. Now, the government incentives for renewable energy. Greenland is a developing country that currently relies on coal for its main source of energy production, stressing the fact that this reliance is caused by affordability and vice versa. Therefore, the main incentive of the nation is to find more affordable sources of renewable energy to replace the non-renewable sources. The successes of other nations' transition to renewable energy can also be replicated in Greenland as well. For example, we took the example of Dubai in figure 3, in which the application of these incentives can reduce the usage for coal and natural gas. Moreover, Greenland does not currently have a solar power plant, Meanwhile, we have also identified that solar energy is a very potential energy source. According to the International Energy Agency, solar energy is the cheapest source of electricity in the world, and this is accordance to the priority of economy in Greenland as well. While previously, solar panels have only been produced by private sectors, integration to the national grid can boost Greenland's projected electrical generating capacity from renewable energy. Now that we have covered our principles, we are moving on to our policies. Next, please. The government of Greenland is committed to, first, provide accessible education regarding climate change and bring sustainability that will produce actionable results to bring betterment to the environment. Because the success of solutions depends on the implementation by the masses. How are we going to do this? By integrating this principle of sustainability to the curriculum and working together with NGOs to create campaigns. By increasing the awareness into the grassroots community, we hope that our citizens will make better choices for the environment. Now that we touched on the citizens aspect, because they play a more major role into the betterment of our citizens as well. So the government is also committed to, second, helping the processing industry to maximize the potential value of each resource and material. We have a finite amount of used to multi-use resources, and also done through the advancement of recycling sector. We will also suggest more preventive actions in order to prevent an obsolete system while ensuring cost effectivity. Excuse me. By doing so, we will also minimize the waste produced. Fourth, we would also implement the design of manufactured products in a wider area of application. This policy aims to encourage the manufacturing processes that paves the idea of reusability and repairability through implementing life cycle policies, therefore advocating for research-based decision-making. Fifth, the government is also committed to helping companies in their quest to shift towards utilizing renewable energy through resource management planning. We understand that the issue every company faces is energy wastage, wherein they do not know how much resources they actually need for the company to run efficiently. This is much difficult for them to transition to renewable energy since they are already reliant on the non-renewable sources. Therefore, providing them with a management resource planning will make them know how much raw material that they actually need along with the sufficient energy that is needed to make production costs efficient. And this is done through working together with consulting firms and creating a projection into how much energy they need to use. Sixth, next slide, please. The government is committed to restructuring companies' financial incentive towards renewable energy utilization through the following methods. First, taxation of renewable energy. Second, reducing taxation of renewable energy. And third, limiting the import quota of non-renewable energy. We understand that companies base their decisions on a cost and benefit analysis. This means that they will still use non-renewable energy if it is more profitable for the company, despite understanding that negative effects that they have on the environment. By implementing this fiscal and monetary policy, the government will provide an additional aspect of consideration and an additional push for these companies when selecting an appropriate energy source. Therefore, adding a new calculus in order to shift towards renewable energy sources. Seventh, to prioritize capital expenditure on technological development. This is done through, first, digitalizing resource management, second, intensifying budget towards funding research and development, and third and fourthly, providing scholarship for researchers. This solution might sound costly at first, but we believe that the environmental and the economic benefit from this policy will be more beneficial in the long term, as technology will constantly get cheaper and cheaper as innovations come forward to rise. Eighth, ensure the management of environmental contamination by economic activities. Despite implementing a circular economy, waste will inadvertently still be there. Therefore, we would like to prevent contamination through risk mitigation and rehabilitation of sectors which is important to create a safe and effective waste management for our people. Ninth, observe and keep track of the changes in the global climate through effective monitoring. Without monitoring, the solutions we propose would be obsolete. So in order for this to work in the long term, we must ensure this policy runs smoothly. Companies, both private and public, are obligated to submit a report detailing their energy usage as well as sustainability practices. The monitoring agents will also be sent to companies to overview the management. Moreover, the government will also work with NGOs to produce an annual climate audit in order for them to be able to review and constantly look at their solutions and make improvements. 10th and finally, help create a sustainable food and packaging system. We believe that food provision and the packaging has a tight link to social welfare, and therefore, to balance it for the environmental purposes, we would like to lessen the amount of packaging in the food industries themselves. We hope that our policies will be able to accommodate all stakeholders to tackle environmental, economic, and trickle to social aspects as well. And it is made feasible because of the budget of social policy being 36% in 2050. Working together with the policy, the innovations will be further explained by my teammate.
Okay, moving on to the innovations, we divide our application of innovations into three types of application. The first will be artificial photosynthesis, the second will be vertical farming and green area development, the third will be system integration. So the first application is artificial photosynthesis. Artificial photosynthesis is a part of the newest carbon capture technology, which focuses on the conversion of carbon dioxide into hydrogen and oxygen. In such ways, this technology is the pioneer upon bringing upon the carbon dioxide resistance on the atmosphere, especially if integrated to carbon dioxide sources, for example, the coal production in Greenland. So this application is divided into three types of methods. The first would be photovoltaic electrochemical cell, of which it utilizes solar energy as one of the primary conversion energy to work. The second would be the water splitting mechanism, which is not in need of concentrated source. However, a catalyst and an N-type semiconductor is needed to ensure conversion and effectiveness of this method. The last would be bioreactor artificial photosynthesis, of which is a combination of water splitting and PEC systems. Moving on to the implementation analysis of application. Photovoltaic electrochemical cells is explained on the figure on the left side. It utilizes the sunlight as their main sources of energy whilst converting the energy through the N-type semiconductors as to be converted. Meanwhile, water splitting on the right side utilizes the conversion through the splitting of carbon dioxide while reacting with water. Both methods still produce a byproduct as an oxygen and hydrogen. Artificial photosynthesis is also one of the biggest contributors to what supposedly is a hydrogen economy, which a lot of countries have been striving to achieve. So as Greenland is a developing country and still dependent by the usage of coal for cheap fuels for development, we believe that the best way to control this is through artificial photosynthesis from bioreactors and application. This is ideal because we are utilizing CO2 emissions for coal production in order to create byproducts such as oxygen and hydrogen, which both are commodities that are highly priced in Greenland. Second will be the vertical farming, green area development. We believe that this application is divided into three main ideas. The first will be the application of aeroponic and hydroponic systems as a means of sustainable food production. The second would be the proposed to serve as green areas, which reduces CO2 emissions and provides cooling for the environment. The third would be the production of locally grown energy minimum food production, which coupled with an integrated system explained in the further presentation. So what are the impact for vertical farming? So we believe that vertical farming reduces water usage by up to 97%. With that in mind, it results in a reduction of fossil fuel consumption. We believe that by reducing the CO2 emission from vertical farming, it will also increase the air quality and also will further in an increase in biodiversity. We believe that the application of vertical farming as a main idea of applying in a vertical area of application, it reduces the usage of pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides, which proposes environmental stewardship. So the next for the socioeconomic impact for vertical farming would be the provision of a bridge between farmers and consumers to the creation of sustainable community. We believe that this will empower the local economy and provide numerous job opportunities to increase the job security of Greenland. We also believe that climate control technology allows urban farmers to have year-round harvests that will significantly boost the production, thus supporting the sustainable community and promote the economy as well. Thus, it will improve the overall health of the surrounding community of Greenland. So the methods for vertical farming will be divided into three methods. The first will be aeroponics, of which the plants are held in a place so that their roots are free floating in the air, infused with water vapor and nutrients. The next will be hydroponics, of which the plants are held in a place in such a way that the roots are directly exposed to water in which dissolved nutrients are continuously circulated. The last will be drip irrigation, of which the plants are placed in reusable and nutrient-rich water is precisely dripped on the stem of the crop. So the last will be the application of system integration. We believe that this is applied into three types of application. The first will be the green buildings following on the structural design based on vertical farming and artificial photosynthesis system, the agri-environmental climate scheme, and the photovoltaic water splitting artificial photosynthesis. We want to integrate this into an idea of system integration. We believe that this is because system integration is implemented into a butterfly diagram process that determines the break-even and equilibrium between the two main factors, of which the ecology and societal. For the ecology side, we believe that ecosystem-based management plan that laid out of uh, we plan on an ecosystem-based management plan that laid out after all of the considerations that are taken into account, and all of the data statistics and data extrapolation will be handled thoroughly. This process is needed to ensure that future predictions are as close as it may occur due to the data processing pressed on the ecosystem of the societal and the ecology. The societal impact would be the implementation, takes care of the relation between societal and ecological considerations from both sides of the policymakers and the innovators. With that, we end our presentation. The next slide is our preferences. So with this, we close our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your wonderful ideas and sharing your presentation with us. We'd move on to the last team of this session for their presentation, which is Team Salifa. So they can start with their presentation now. I'd once again request Team Salifa to view the 2071 shared screen, the Pioneers shared screen. Okay, you may start with the presentation now.
So, good day, everyone. We're trying to present society made of burned fuels. Our main idea is to create an adequate and smooth transition from industrial society, a bit conservative society, to a more green, responsible, and rational community for both people and corporations. That's our main idea and our goal to achieve. And starting through the policies, we firstly start to introducing a cap and trade system for the companies that we have, introducing a such limitation of greenhouse gas production of thermal production for industries companies, and permitting each company to produce a concrete ton of a precise ton of carbon dioxide emissions, distributing allowances among companies through in auctions and companies trade allowances among each other. So what we're actually trying to achieve with this thing is when limitation of greenhouse gas emissions is introduced, companies have more incentive to produce less air pollution and introduce sustainable technologies for their production facilities. Moreover, the government will continue gradually decreasing the amount of permitted emissions. As we stated before, our main idea is to gradually change to the to the green alternative energies rather than doing it immediately through the taxations and other stuff. Splitting the limitations into allowance and distributing them among companies through an auction will decline the overall carbon dioxide production level, allowing companies to trade the allowance and creating an internal market between private enterprises. Thus, auctioning permissions and sanctioning the companies for not complying with the regulations will ensure the external source of income for the government. Um, Basically, this means that if we are giving to each company some kind of limitation, so they will stick to those limitations or trade the limitation to other companies so that other companies could do even more. If this incentive would not be forwarded by this company, we're going to tax this company and going to have more incentive for the government, for more income of our government. Uh, an estimated decrease is to decrease the carbon dioxide emissions. Secondly, we have a carbon taxes. This reduce and eventually eliminate carbon dioxide production in our Greenland country, provide incentives for the private entities and public sectors to implement sustainable technologies for the energy production and reflect the true cost in producing carbon dioxide. Um, this is a simple and basic idea to tax those companies who exceed in carbon taxations and do not move to sustainable development. But how do we proceed for them to move for those sustainable and more green energies is, next slide. Goes down. So we're going to subsidize the renewable power generation technologies. Subsidies will help the companies. It is a big incentive for them to move because the taxes alone would not be a great solution for the company to move for the green energy because they won't believe in such. It's better for them to shut down the facilities to move to another country. So our company, our corporates, people, and government, everyone loses. So we're gonna subsidize for renewable power generation technologies, creating a new way for the to move to those places. Um, the third and the one of the most economical policies that we have today is the UBI. What we're trying to do is to keep social security systems that we are going to have to keep all the things for the people to be more accessible. Nowadays, we see a problem with social welfare systems because we, as a government, creating a lot of institutes to control each vulnerable economical or social class. Because we create a lot of institutes, we're going to expand our budget. We're going to blow our budget. It is a lot of money to keep everyone for their money and to keep everyone on a track, to create a lot of documents to justify that you are vulnerable class or that you're socially or economically vulnerable class. There's a lot of documents, and so it's bureaucracy. And sometimes, and a lot of actually times, people just don't get those social welfare. They do not get the money they need for them to live. They do not get the things that we as a government trying to provide to them. So we, with the UBI, we providing more accessible social welfare and more social secure system that we have today, because UBI is a fixed amount that government is, by this, we're eliminating all of the social institutes that we already have. It is fixed amount, concrete, all of the population, as we call it, working population at the age 18. And we are giving them money on a regular basis on each month. By this, we do not create any, those money coming from taxes from our treasury. So we do not create any new money. So the inflation is not possible in this moment. And giving money instantly to those vulnerable and socially and economically vulnerable classes will help them to keep on track with all social stuff that we're trying to provide to them. Next.
Team Salifa,
Yeah.
can you check your share screen options because half of your screen is cropped?
Sure, I will.
I think it's okay.
No, I think it's
Yeah, it's okay now.
Oh, okay.
Continuing on with social policies, we're trying to create a reliable and rational community as well as among the people. So we're trying to penalize those people and penalizing penalties for the cars. And so we have incentive for people to move to more green energy cars, to the more electrical or it also we're gonna it's pretty basic to understand that penalty for those cars is because the emission produced from using private transportation and lack of incentives to purchase zero emission cars or switch to the public transport. So the aim is provide more incentive for CO2-based cars, passengers to switch to zero-emission alternatives or increase demand for using public transportation. The mental health is also a big problem in trying to implement more accessible, and not just more accessible, but um, more concrete and more basic. First thing that we're gonna introduce as a mental health, it is included into the primary healthcare system. So everything from the basis of the psychotherapy and psychologist is going to be accessible for every citizen in our country as a primary healthcare system, which is very important during the fact that a lot of people are just suffering from burnout. A lot of people suffering from the ecological disasters that they do not feel well, and we are as a government trying to provide um, any solution to those people to feel good, to feel better. Next. Rustem. As well, going through the medicine, vaccinations, and treatment of accompanying diseases is a very demanding course today, because as the tropical diseases occur in our country, which is very unfamiliar and very uncommon for other people, we have to create herd immunity, the population immunity in our country. First of all is going to be the vaccination. So we are funding the vaccines and creating the vaccines or getting the vaccines from outside to the people that live in our country to create firstly herd immunity, and then we're trying to treat the accompanying diseases, because as we know by statistics that most of the people that are getting sick by any of the um, getting ill by any of those sicknesses are not dying from those sicknesses, but from the difficulties that they create in our immunity systems, that in this immunity systems of people. So creating only vaccines would not help, but also the treatment of accompanying diseases, just to eliminate those sicknesses, those illnesses from our society, is a better choice. Increasing the budgeting on the forest fire preventing is also a policy aimed to the uh, aimed to creating less and less social disaster in our country. Last one, Rus. Rustam. The last one is international policy, lack of technological advancements, financial resources, and research required to expertise efficiently implement and use sustainable technologies in developing countries. We're going to implement this as creating an international investment bank among development and developing countries. For the remark, no country is forced to be a part of the international agreement. Agreement is created with only purpose to support those countries in need, as climate change is a global issue which requires contribution from all governments. Implies improving green technologies and research programs, use public funds to introduce private investment and clean energy technologies that have struggled to be established among consumers and producers. Going through the technologies, Bruce?
A very cheerful evening to all, and Assalamu alaikum. Our team today presents mainly three ideas that comply with the ideology of gradual shift from environmental adaptation measures to radical improvements throughout the country. The first is massive industrial shift to trigeneration. Because of corporate lobby, civil discontent, and many other factors that make radical environmental changes, such as complete budget reorganization, it is necessary to find alternative ways to reduce exhaust emissions. In status quo, fossil fuels consumption emissions is about 30%, as there are huge losses when combustion processes uh, produce electricity only. Through this innovation, the fossil fuels uh, combusted are to produce electricity, and also they are going to be used for hot and chilled water provision to the society and to the industries. As a result, less fossil fuels will be used to provide the people with more goods. Thus, less fossil fuels will be combusted, resulting in less carbon dioxide emissions to damage the climate, and less nitrogen oxides, less particulate matter, less volatile organic compounds, and would be produced in a, and thus a passive solution to the photochemical smog problem in grain is also going to be presented. Moreover, upon placement of, chilled water air conditioning systems, the demand of energy to support those systems is also going to decrease, resulting in less fossil fuels consumption. Essentially, the idea is to be implemented in two simultaneous methods. First, it is the placement of trigeneration-based electricity power plants near residential and office buildings of towns and cities, thereby providing them with electricity, hot and chilled water, as well as the air conditioning systems. Therefore, the second is the integration of trigeneration-based efficiency solutions into existing industries to provide them with the same goods. Thus, we believe that by increasing the fossil fuels consumption efficiency from 30% to 85%, a lot of existing problems are to be solved. The second idea that we present today is the integrated industrial carbon industrialization disrupted the carbon cycle heavily. It is the technology's duty to solve this problem. Thus, our team proposes the implementation of anthropogenic carbon capture and storage technologies as a solution to huge concentration of carbon dioxide in grainland air. To be more precise, three direct measures are to be implemented simultaneously. First, it is a state-funded construction of CCS infrastructure containing metal organic frameworks, which recently proved to be incredibly efficient in carbon capture and storage. For efficiency and economy reasons, these are to be placed in areas with slow yet continuous winds near the industry so that the masses of air could be passed through them and more carbon dioxide would be captured and stored. The second measure is the oxy-fuel carbon sequestration in the industrial facilities that will promote complete fuel incineration, resulting in two exhaust gases, carbon dioxide and steam, the latter being precipitated while the carbon dioxide to be separated and stored for later reuse or disposal. And third is the pre-combustion coal preparation, which is also going to take place on the industrial facilities, through which carbon is separated and stored before the incineration, and hydrogen, as the byproduct of this, is burned, with the steam being the exhaust gas. As you could notice, the latter two methods are the measures that the corporations will be obliged to implement in 5 to 10 years, with possible changes in the deadlines depending on the fund and technology availability. As a result, we're going to have less carbon dioxide emissions, we're going to have less greenhouse gas emissions, and thus we are going to passively solve, and not passively, but actively solve the problem of photochemical smoke, as well as health issues due to air pollution. The last idea that we present today is a transition to hydrogen-driven generation plants. Although most of the solutions, or most of our solutions are directed towards peaceful and efficient environmental adaptation measures, it is anyway our priority to ensure sustainable future for Greenland. We propose the hydrogen gas as a clean fuel to which Greenland has to aspire. Given the country's specific circumstances, we propose two methods for hydrogen generation. First is a steam reforming, that is, hydrogen production by heating natural gas to approximately 1300 degrees Celsius. This will be done by burning bio-waste of industrialized grainland to generate bio LNG for the boilers, and thus resulting in the hydrogen gas formation.
Your time is lapsed. Thank you. Okay. All right. So Team Salifa has presented their proposed solution, and they have some really wonderful ideas to go about. We will now move to the question answer session after a 10 minutes break, during which the team members can go to their breakout rooms and deliberate upon the discussion that is going to unfold. See you all after in the discussion. Oh, I don't want to go in the room with Professor. So we are going to start the question answer session with the participants, and I'm going to open with a question from NUS Student Union team. My first question to you is, in your initial policy plan, you introduced a policy to dismantle any health or pension provision services. And given the scenario, there is a public health dilemma or a crisis going on because of the environmental issue, and people are suffering. There have been many casualties because of heat, strokes, and dismantling this health and pension provisions would have very drastic detrimental effect on public health. So have you thought about that? Team, yeah. NUS Student Union.
Yeah, so I'll be taking the question. So the question is actually talking about how we remove the pensions and health services, but actually what we propose is not the complete removal, but rather a revamp of the healthcare support payments. So I think we did mention in our written policy that there is going to be a scheme where the poorer pays less compared to the rich who will be paying more for the healthcare systems. So I think that this system actually benefits the economy in a whole, as in comparing to similar welfare support such as the NHS in Britain, which will incur large amount of welfare spendings compared to the one that we are showing, which is something that is something that's more prevalent in Asian countries such as Singapore. The spending would therefore be lowered, and the money can be placed somewhere else, which would be much better used for dealing with the current problem of climate change.
Okay, thank you for your answer. I'll move on to my next question, which is from Race Against the Fuels. My question to Race Against Fuels is, they proposed an alternate energy source as solar panel. Given the scenario, the solar irradiation is diminished, which decreases the photovoltaic efficiency of these solar panels because of the polluted air. So how are you proposing to deal with this low efficiency solar panels, because they will cause a spike in the installation price and operation price of these solar panels? So the electricity would be quite expensive.
Hello, can you hear me?
You may
Okay,
answer.
so first of all, I would like to thanks a lot for the question, and I would like to answer your question regarding the photovoltaic. First of all, we are using the photovoltaic electrochemical cell, in which, of course, it relies on the solar energy. However, it also utilizes a lot of conversion from the CO2 itself, because it utilizes from not only photovoltaic, but due to it being an electrochemical cell, it can also taken things from, well, the CO2 conversion itself, not only with the water, but also with other substances. That's why on the photovoltaic electrochemical cell, there can be a catalyst to support this diminishing of the sun, which is depending by the metals used for the catalyst. For example, rust, which is Fe2CO3, or TiO2 or titanium dioxide, can increase the efficiency with disregarding, not really disregarding as a whole. However, it can further notice the diminishing of the sun. So without actually saying the operation will be higher, etc., we can also create a more separation on the cost, and to create more economies of scale, and to create more break-even point for this production system. We can also improve for the catalyst used for this photovoltaic electrochemical cell. So that's my answer to you.
All right, thank you very much for your answer.
No problem.
Is there any question from the audience? No. All right, I'll move on to my question to Team Salifa. Do you propose any alternate energy source to decrease fossil fuel usage? If so, what is the alternate energy source that you propose?
I think I can answer the question. The last innovation that we proposed was the use of hydrogen fuel produced from the biomass burning and bioreactions. So essentially, the massive shift to hydrogen is an alternative, cleaner way of using fossil fuels. Even if we produce them from natural gas, at least the exhaust gases are clean and not that hazardous.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. And now we have a question from UA from NUS Student Union. Which team
I
do you
would
want
like
to ask question?
I would like to direct this question to both of the teams because this question is applicable to both of them.
But I would urge that you direct the question to one team at a time so that other people also get the chance to ask questions.
Okay, then I will direct my question to Sulifa.
Okay. Go on.
Okay, so third innovation. Sorry. In your written solution, we can see that your third innovation is using hydrogen gas as a fuel source. So we were wondering that since hydrogen is a volatile gas that is hard to store, collect, and transport, furthermore, hydrogen gas is also highly flammable. So how can you ensure that this hydrogen gas is being stored properly, such that the industrial processes that are being carried out would not possibly cause a disaster, such as an industrial fire, like what had happened in Lebanon?
I think I can answer the question. We did not include that in the written solution part, but it is in our presentation for the proposal, and I actually wanted to mention that during the presentation. Essentially, we believe that based on the assumption that in 50 years, such technologies as, for example, palladium and other useful metals usage for hydrogen consumption through the absorption of hydrogen ions and hydrogen atoms to the palladium surfaces and through various engineered molecules, we believe that this would be quite possible. Moreover, we believe that in order to prevent such instances as have happened in the Lebanon, for example, as I already presented, one of the methods that we use to generate hydrogen is the steam reforming, which is essentially reforming the natural gas at 1300 degrees Celsius. That is, we believe that we can ensure the absence of any leakages of hydrogen gas by integrating the produced hydrogen in already existing hydrogen storage and transport system within the grainland. Because from the information we know that they already used certain amounts of natural gas, thus they have the system to support us in hydrogen storage and transport. Moreover, we believe that since they have this natural gas usage, they also may have underground caverns where also natural gas was stored. And since we are integrating natural gas into the production of hydrogen, we believe that hydrogen, in order to prevent any kind of leakages and explosions, can be stored also in those caverns. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. Now I'd like to ask a question from NUS. They said in their fourth policy about restructuring public transport infrastructure such that there would be a public-private partnership and there would be a ceiling, and it's a build, own, operate model as written in their solution, which means the private party will build, own, and operate the public infrastructure, which is a green transport infrastructure. So conventional infrastructure, public transport infrastructure, it's a green transport, it will be very expensive, and the private company, private partner would be more concerned about the break-even point and return on profit. So how is the government going to regulate a ceiling so that the public transport is affordable? If the public transport is not affordable, then the incentive in itself collapses. So where's the incentive then?
Okay, thank you for your question. So just to reiterate the question raised, it's actually about the cost of the public transport, especially when we go green, because green technology is known to be expensive. But I would like to reiterate that that is not the case especially for buses as well as public transport. Public transport runs through, okay, so at least for the public transport in Singapore, we are running it through electricity, so electrical buses, which have enough range to go for a similar distance as diesel operated ones. So when we are talking about electricity, then we will have to think of electrical production, which in a sense can kind of decrease the cost, especially if we are taking the electricity from the source itself, especially from the power stations who are able to create electricity at a much lower cost compared to private companies. And the private companies are there to specifically provide the bus services and plan out routes where these green buses will be taking these routes to different parts of Greenland, for example. And they will be charging the customer based on how the distance traveled, while the government will provide the electricity required for these buses at a discounted rate if needed to make sure that the price ceiling is achieved. I hope that answered the question. Thank you very much for your question once again.
Yeah, thank you very much for the answer. I'm going to take a question from.
I'm sorry, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm going to take a question from Race Against the Fuel. Kuzaimas.
Yes, okay. So thank you for the opportunity for the time. First of all, I would like to express my sincerest appreciation for the opposing teams. And my question is for Nusu, specifically on the innovation regarding Tidal Barrage. And so,
Nusu, are you going to entertain the question?
Yes, we will.
Okay. So after reading a paper from the International Conference on Hydraulics, Water Resources, and Coastal Engineering, I've read a large chance, specifically a 15% chance of the fish area within the region of the tidal barrage to be killed or be injured in the process. And to me, this is a very high environmental impact. Why? Because considering the fact that fish, as well as a source of food and commodity, is useful for Greenland. And considering again that Greenland is suffering from a food shortage, this becomes a major issue. Apart from this, the tidal extent of impact towards the ocean's biodiversity could be also see that for me, for us, how we see it, that your creation is sort of contradictory to your ideology, which revolves. We also, from an engineering and
Hello,
industry.
sorry. Could you repeat your last sentence? You let
Okay.
go.
Which one? Okay, wait. So I'll repeat. So furthermore, we see that this part of your solution regarding the tidal barrage and its concern regarding the ocean's biodiversity is contradictory to your ideology, which is focusing on environment. Moving on to my second point regarding tidal barrage, from an of creating the tidal barrage is lengthy with a large upfront cost. Moreover, the maintenance of this type of technology will be also costly.
Okay. I would like to answer your question. So thank you for your question. So, first of all, right. So for the first part about biodiversity and marine life, I have not read the paper that you have stated. However, for our source, so you can look at it if you want. It is actually at our it is actually in our written solution and it will be our second reference from Hakai magazine. So according to our source that we have found, it actually wouldn't cause at much environmental damage as we expect. And I am not knowledgeable enough to justify if this source is correct or wrong, and I cannot justify whether you are correct or wrong. However, I would leave this I would leave this on in consideration. Thank you for bringing that up. So secondly, right? So for the aspect of cost, so of course we are not going to build the whole length of the tidal barrage at the same time. So it will of course be a progressive process. So this is the first part, and the second part is that it will. So we actually expect to produce clean energy using that tidal barrage. So we are also hoping partly to subset its costs and provide intangible benefits to the population. Next off, we hope that by the time of 30 years, 2051, the technology will be more advanced, such that the cost of building a tidal barrage will actually be brought down. Even if it's then, and then for the last one, right? Why do we think that it is a worthy investment? It's because there are most likely it is not stated in the excerpt. However, we do make a reasonable assumption that there will be a lot of coastal cities and areas around the coastline, and it is also stated that there's a lot of agricultural land near the coastline. So it will help us to target. It will help us to bring intangible benefits, that it provides security and more food security in economy and food. So this is why we wanted to choose the coastline. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, NUS, for your answer. And now I'd like to take a question from Sulifa Rustam.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question from NUSSU. In there, are you going to take
NUSSU? Should we skip the question or are you going to take it?
We will take it.
Okay.
In your written solution, you spend a lot of time in terms of policies that they may actually result in certain political, economical, and civil unrest within the state. That is why I have a question related to that part of the question. So when we are going to have various lobbyists, for example, like military lobbyists that are going to actually be against the diminishing of the military budget that you are proposing, we believe that they are going to be against that. We believe that they are actually going to bite other people, so that they were also against it. We believe that when you are decreasing the certain services to the population, as for example the pension, as you propose, the population is also going to be not that happy about it, and that's why we're going to have this unrest. That is why I ask you, why do you believe that given this level of this content that you are creating within the population, both on the corporate level and on the citizen level, why do you believe that there won't be the significant loss of electorate throughout the country against those environmentally friendly solutions and policies? And why do you believe that there won't be any kind of rise of, for example, right-wing populism that is also going to oppose the policies that you propose, just because the theme of industrial people not getting their pensions is actually going to be quite important for those population, and that's why they are going to be against it. That's why they are going to not to vote for the government proposed
right.
environmental policies. That's
I think the gist of the question is the political aspect of the policies devised by the team. So if they got the gist, they can answer.
Thank you for your question. I feel that we hope that the populace will understand the dilemma in. It's like how say, like, you know, back in World War II, like the citizens will understand why they will have to give up some of their welfare, you know, because of the war they're in or whatsoever. We hope to, you know, get morale. And it may sound a bit authoritarian, but we believe that considering the situation in Greenland, it is very terrible. We propose that this is the only way forward lah, and it's really up to the people whether they want a better future or do they want democracy and continue to argue and engage in a gridlock. I hope that answers your question. I think my teammate has something to add.
Okay, that works. Thank you for your answer. And I have a question to ask the Race Against the Fuels. They describe in one of their ideas about artificial photosynthesis, innovative ideas. I'm not sure about the mechanism of this innovative idea. If we look at the schematic figure, it shows that it needs electricity for the process of splitting the input materials. That is, it converts somehow carbon dioxide into hydrogen and oxygen, which are relatively harmless, and then hydrogen can be used as a source of fuel. So my question is, if it's at the expense of electricity, where's that electricity going to come from? From conventional fossil fuel sources?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, so first of all, thanks a lot for the good question, and please allow me to answer your amazing question. So first of all, regarding the electrolysis of the water splitting, even though they need electricity, due to the fact that it can be used from any electricity due to the n-type semiconductor and the anode and the catalyst, the electricity can come from anywhere. Either it is from household or it is from the production of the coal itself. However, since we have a transition from the coal production into the bioreactor and into the photovoltaic electrochemical cell, we can also use that to produce this water splitting. However, there's something that I would like to add. In this method of water splitting, since this carbon dioxide is reacting to the water and will be then split into the H2 and O2, the way that the splitting does not exactly requires a lot of electricity because the reactions that they have during this process. So to answer your question regarding which electricity that can be, especially that how does it actually work, it can be from any source of electricity. As long as we have any means of electricity, we can use this as an electrolysis for this water splitting mechanism. So as long as there's carbon dioxide and the water itself, it can be a wastewater even that was produced by the coal production. It can be repurposed and split the water from any source of electricity. I hope that answers your question. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much for the answer. And now I have a question to Team Salifa. They expressed in their first idea about massive industrial shift to trigeneration to increase fossil fuel efficiency. And in the written solution that they submitted, they wrote the efficiency of fuel usage shall be increased from current 30% to 85% that may be provided by massive shift to trigeneration. So do you have any practical example to exemplify this increase, this significant increase in efficiency, 30% to 85%, that has been implemented worldwide anywhere?
Sure, I think I can answer this question. Essentially, we have this significant increase in efficiency. Why? Because we are not just using those fossil fuels to produce electricity, but simultaneously we also regenerating the heat produced from fossil fuels consumption to boiling the water in boilers and chilling water in absorption mechanisms that actually going to chill this water. Regarding your question, if there are precedents throughout the world, yes, there are. There are various corporations currently that actually provides industries with trigeneration-based efficiency solutions. As far as I remember, Clark Energy is one of them, and they are actually providing industries with certain technologies and plans to introduce those innovations. That is, if the industry only produce, for example, electricity for their purposes, they were also implementing their absorption capacitors in order to produce chilled water, in order to produce, for example, generators that they have on their industries. And essentially, this is how it works today.
And now I will take a question from Race Against the Fuels, Maurice.
Okay. Hello. I would like to ask a question to Salifa. So regarding the shifting to the hydrogen, and I'm really sorry, but I didn't see the limitations on the written solutions. But I would like to ask, to what extent does this method prove the viability for Greenland, especially because to produce the microalgae or the microbial mass for the industry are not exactly convenient to create for developing countries. Needs to focus on a lot of other things. So I think that's your question, and thanks a lot for the presentations.
Salifa, would you like to?
Yes, yes, we are going to answer the question. regarding the fact that biomass and bioalgae may not be the most efficient source for the developing country as Greenland, we believe that maybe bioalgae may not be the best source, but we still believe that given that firstly, developing countries usually have a lot of biological waste due to the fact that they are not that rich and they mainly cook their own food from their own vegetables, we are going to have certain huge amount of biomass to produce hydrogen. And secondly, we believe that given that Greenland, excuse me, given that Greenland is also a developing country that developing countries mainly use such sources as for such things as, for example, landfills for waste management, we believe that the problem of bioreactions through, for example, bacteria is not going to be the problem for hydrogen hydrogen generation. Thank you for your question.
All right, we will have our next question from Crescentia, belonging to Race Against the Fuels.
Hi, am I audible?
We can't hear you, Crescentia. Can you speak louder?
Am I audible? Hello?
It's better now.
Okay, so I have a question for Salifa, actually. Our team has two main concerns regarding the feasibility of your policy regarding carbon tax and penalty payments. So for carbon tax, we understand the purpose of the limitation. However, when an alternative is not suggested, by the government, companies might think that paying the carbon tax, for example, the $25 per ton in your document, would still be cheaper than renewable energy. How do you propose to tackle this potential issue? And secondly, for the penalty payments, since the citizens are already reliant to non-renewables and they are not exposed to the alternatives, how do you make sure that the citizens actually understand the justification behind the penalty payment and mobilize them to actually transition? Thank you.
Hello, thank you for your question. And beforehand, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to apologize for the background noises. It's just I'm in the airport, and I made the planning committee aware of it beforehand. So I would like to answer your question. First of all, regarding carbon tax, and if you could see from our written proposal, we have two policies implemented in Greenland. The first one is emissions trading system, which is a very, very effective and efficient policy that has been already implemented in a lot of countries in the world. And we have sources from OECD in our written solution that you can get familiar with. And the reason why we implementing such regressive tax in the economy of Greenland is because it's the only effective and efficient way for the whole country and for the industries to switch to renewable energy, because it's the only way how companies and industries can get incentives to do so. And yeah, we are aware that it's gonna because it's a regressive tax and the demand in this case for fossil fuels is inelastic for our consumers, then the price obviously is gonna increase. But the thing is, if you could go through our social policies, again, you could see that we're also implementing subsidies for those people in need. And it was one of the limitations that was also discussed and solution proposed in the Britain solution, that we're gonna subsidize low-income people and tackle their problems as such. And also, when it comes to targeting low-income people and those people in need who cannot pay for the energy, we also introduced UBI. So while the transition of industries from dirty technologies, let's call it this way, is happening to clean technologies. It's probably going to take 20 or 30 years, and it's very difficult to calculate such time duration because not enough data is given. And also in the scenario itself, it's been given that in the course of 50 years, Greenland has to decrease its emissions by 60%. meaning that it has to cut so much, and it's very difficult to achieve such results introducing policies like spreading awareness and educative policies. I mean, they're also efficient, but they're not as efficient as introducing economic policies that would actually tackle industries and give them incentives to switch. But while this clean...
Thank you for your answer. Your time's lapsed for the answer. I'm sorry. All right, we'll take one question from NUS. Kiran.
Unfortunately, I have a question for Sulifa. Okay. Would they like, yeah. I have a question for Sulifa. Yeah.
I think yes, we will take it.
All right, I'm so sorry, but I'd just like to ask about a universal basic income, right? Will the universal basic income be given, like, will a flat amount be given to all citizens? Because from what I hear is like, you all are trying to give everyone a fixed amount. And also, right, why you said that you wanted to reduce like government administration, but yet you are making people pay tax, and then using that tax money, you're using that money to give universal basic income. Isn't that, government like red tape there, and is contradictory to what you have mentioned earlier? Yeah. Hope you can answer my question. Thank you.
If I'd like to repeat the last part of the question, please.
So I was saying that you all were saying that you all will use the tax money to pay universal basic income, right? But then, right, so there is a two-way process. I feel there's a ways in government money to, like, process the tax and then give it back to the citizens again. So I'm wondering that if this is there, do you all have actually a better solution to this, or is this intended? Yeah, these administrative procedures. I hope you get my question.
So the question.
I can answer this question if you want, Alisher. May I?
May I then give additional info if I can?
Yeah, no problem. Okay, I'm going to answer this question. So basically, how any country in the world in a capitalistic system works, and any other system in general, it doesn't even matter what country you live in, but basically how the government budgeting is formed in any country is investments, loans, funds, and taxes. So universal basic income is not only consists of collecting tax. Universal basic income is distributing the overall government budget for people in need. And we're not only gonna tax consumers, right? Because we taxing producers as well. So if you tax companies, your government receives tax revenue. This tax revenue goes to government budget, which government can spend to any kind of social policies or anything to their citizens, like, I don't know, better quality of education, vaccination procedures, subsidies for energy, subsidies, forest, prevention of deforestation, and raising awareness about ecological ways of living. Your question, but if you need a more clarification, I can elaborate more. And Alisher, you also wanted to add something to it.
So, may I?
Yes, Alisher, you have 1 minute.
So actually, the UBI, is, as we said before, is only about the taxation of people, but Aijan included it's in her answer. But also, we should understand that the social welfare as UBI is working better than any other option that we have right now, because social welfare is itself based on taxes, and we cannot avoid it. Any social welfare is going to be based on the taxes, and by the UBI, we're just creating a better social welfare to decrease and eliminate bureaucracy and creating a lot of institutions to just make a giant babble of our governmental budget. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. And I'd like to ask NUS a question. It's a follow-up question regarding their public-private transport infrastructure revamping. They said they're about the green transport, like electrical buses in Singapore. For a developing country like Greenland, the main crux or the issue is generation of electricity, and how they're doing it and how they're providing electricity to their industry to operate is by relying on fossil fuels for the most part of it, like 75% of it. So if they were to run green transport electrical buses, where will the electricity come from? Will it come from these conventional fossil fuels burning power plant generators?
Your microphone is muted.
So the question raised, let me reiterate the question raised. So it's on how we plan to get the electricity for the electrical buses. Is that right? Hello?
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
So just to reiterate, you're asking how are we going to get the electricity required for the electrical bus, given that the current way of electricity by Greenland is via fossil fuels, which is not very clean.
Yes.
Right. So one of the policies we actually raised, one of our innovation was actually to have a cleaner source of fossil fuels. So the burning of alternate fossil fuels can also be an alternate policy that we can come up with, which might not be in the written solution, but we have discussed about it. So one of these policies would be the shift from the burning of traditional fossil fuels, which tends to be more smoky and cause PM2.5 and PM10 concentrations to go up by large amounts, to something such as briquette fuel, which are a little bit more expensive, about 20% more expensive, but burns at a much cleaner rate. And also we have thought about using various filters that air before the air is released from the power plant. So in that sense, Greenland would be the one still producing the electricity, but they have to be the one initiating these changes in technology changes, which definitely will become much cheaper in the future by 2050. And in that sense, it will make electricity much more clean and viable options compared to fossil fuels in the future, even though the fossil fuels are burned, because the fossil fuels will be technically clean when they are burned and will not release these air pollutants into the atmosphere. So in essence, we would want to provide an alternative fuel source, be it fossil fuel or briquette fuel. We will think that cleaning the fossil fuels will be the optimal way to go forward to reduce the air pollution done by creating electricity for these green transport modes. Do I still have time? I actually can elaborate a little further.
You have 30 more seconds.
Okay, so just a quick one. So given that the idea of a public transport is that a lot of people share this one transport vehicle. So the carbon emissions to the atmosphere is also divided by that number of people compared to those who are driving private owned cars. So in essence, this is something that we would like to add as well, that the sharing of this public transport will also help decrease the per capita carbon emissions. Thank you for your question.
All right. I would like to leave the floor open for the honorable professors if they have questions from the teams.
Should I go first?
Yes.
Okay, for NUSSU, I think that was just 1 second. Oh, for the Sulifa team, can I ask any team or?
You can ask any team.
Okay. I've noticed that there was a mental health issue on the social policies. Could you elaborate on that regarding the current problem?
You answered to the question to our team Sulifa, right?
Mm-hmm.
To elaborate on the problem of the social, on the mental health and mental health issues that we are currently facing in Greenland, it is said in the case that a lot of people are facing difficulties, the burnout, some people because there's not enough sunshine coming to the land, and also people are just how to say some of the social aspects of social relations are getting destroyed. So to the fact that we are trying to fix the ecological pollution and ecological disasters and pollution and stuff, we still need to work about the depression, burnout that people have right now and nowadays. And we are trying to introduce and implement some of the techniques that a lot of other countries use nowadays, like creating and including the mental health into the primary healthcare system, that it is provided to every person in our country since their birth, and it is conceded and concluded to their basic needs. Um, Mostly right now, the mental health is some kind of private system which you want to go by yourself, and you do not always have access. It is not always accessible for every person in the countries, and we're trying to provide a more accessible way to get a therapy, a more accessible way to get prescriptions, a more accessible way to get help and cure those depression-like symptoms in our people. We're including the mental health system, mental health committee, like to say, into our primary healthcare system, if it is an answer for your question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Dongchan Lee.
Okay, I have a question for Team NUSSU. You propose in Greenland to have the use of waste heat, to accelerate or to elevate the efficiency of overall energy use. I'd like to ask a little more detailed questions on that particular segment. Just for the sake of argument, I know that there's a development, well, not only development, but the use of this waste heat in factories and industry. How do you improve the use of waste heat better than the current level or current state of the art? Have you thought about it?
Okay, I will try to address the question. Sorry, but the person doing this is not currently here. But I will try my best to address it. So, so what we are Prof, you said that the waste using the waste heat to be channeled to other facilities. So, what we are trying we are what we are trying to include in our written proposal was that a longer distance water channel. So actually we can actually only find two more exemplary examples. One is in Denmark and another one is in China, a small town in China. So from the research that we have done, it is by using a water course and by using heat-proof material to ensure that the heat is able to be transported through a longer distance with less heat loss. So this is mainly the innovation that we are trying to bring out.
Okay, so just I'd like to piggyback on that question. How can you give me a little more detail about how to improve the use of waste heat compared to the state of the art? I mean, if you don't have any answer to that, that's fine. But I'm just curious, just for the sake of curiosity, I just like to know that how you want to improve the current technology in terms of reusing the heat.
Prof, so I'll try to add on to what my teammates said actually. So something that we actually came up with was the insulation of the pipes to transport the water, to transmit the heat. So one form of innovation which might not be possible right now would be through the use of various type of materials, which might include something such as a vacuum layer where we can help with by lowering the transmission of heat to the pipes. So in that sense, more of that heat will be transmitted across a larger distance. Alternatively, we can aim to have, say, for example, power plants, right? But having something like factories that requires these power plants around it. So the electricity that is produced from the power plants can go to something, for example, the residential homes, while the more crude forms of the heat from the production of energy can be supplied to nearby factories, in a sense that the factories can have their own generation plant inside using this hot water to generate power themselves. So it's something like a reused kind of energy system that we are currently looking at. But as of now, for something that is state of the art and used only by 2 countries out in the world out there, but it's something that we can actively continue to search and improve on. Hope that answers your question, Prof. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I believe we are at the end of our question and answer session, and we'll be moving on to the concluding speeches. And before the concluding speeches, I'd just like to make a concluding remark. As far as the debate sessions are concerned, this debate session was very constructive, and there were many innovative ideas to utilize energy in better ways and utilize alternate renewable sources of energy. For example, the Race Against Fuels, they proposed the use of solar panels as an alternate source. And Salifa, they came up with a hydrogen fuel source to use for proposed hydrogen-driven plants for the generation of electricity. Even though there are more intriguing questions and we are bound by the limitations of time, so we can't go further into the discussion here, but nonetheless, these ideas were really good. Having said that, there were some fundamental elements which were very crucial to the scenario given for Greenland, which were missed. For example, there was this international pressure on Greenland for adherence to Daejeon Protocol, and they were given a specific target, which was 60% carbon dioxide emission reduction in 10 years. And none of the teams mentioned a specific numerical target, a specific value of target that they would be able to achieve, or a specific strategy that enables that country, Greenland, to achieve carbon dioxide emission by a certain percentage by a certain years. So there was an issue of radical groups. So some of the members also raised political aspects of the policies that were devised or suggested. And one of the political aspect was also mentioned in the scenario, but we discussed that little. And there were some irrelevant policies that might not have whatsoever any impact on the issues that are critical to the scenario. However, nonetheless, the overall debates went very productive. Having said that, I would invite in reverse order the teams to conclude this session with a concluding speech and give us an overall brief of what they learned from this session and what was added to their knowledge and what they could give back. So we would start by Team Salifa.
Okay. How much time do I have for the conclusive speech?
You have 5 minutes for the concluding speech.
Okay. The first and foremost, I would like to thank all of the participants and all of the panel for this fantastic opportunity to speak up, to share our views. In conclusion, I would like to point out that we proposed. We believe that one of the key features that this industrial Greenland as a country has is the fact that there is a high possibility of certain political unrest, certain civil unrest. That's why we really pushed the idea of environmental adaptation as the first measure, and only then proposed the transition towards hydrogen fuel as the alternative way to energy production. That's why I would like to state that all in all, the way we see it is that by increasing the fossil fuels consumption efficiency, by sequestrating, that is capturing, storing carbon, we are trying to get to the goal that that you have already mentioned, in the sense that only 60% of carbon emissions. But also what we are striving to do is to prepare the country, both on the political arena, in the sense of civil awareness, and on the corporate arena in the sense of private sectors and the corporations acceptance of the policies that are to come, to the idea that it is indeed possible and necessary to implement certain changes, both in terms of policies that may sometimes sound radical, but in essence are quite adaptive, and policies that also may sound a bit radical, but in essence are quite adaptive, except for the hydrogen, except for the transition to the hydrogen fuel. That's why we believe that in this sense, we are preparing the ground for implementation of much more radical policies in the future. If to compare us to other teams who believe that in contrast to others, most of our policies are incredibly interconnected, in the sense that the carbon sequestration technologies that we are going to use are also going to produce a lot of, for example, steam that may be then used for hydrogen fuel production through steam reforming. The same applies for our policies like cap and trade and carbon tax, and again, they are connected as well to the carbon capture and storage. And that's why we believe that through this interrelation, the efficiency of all our policies are quite high. And in addition to the fact that the possibility of certain unrest and, for example, loss of any political capital to implement those changes, both right now and in 50 years and even later, in terms of environmentally advantageous policies, is quite high. And the possibility, for example, of toppling the government or no acceptance of any reforms is not that high. And on this, I would like to conclude and express my deepest gratitude to everybody.
Thank you for your concluding remarks. And now we would move to Team Race Against.
Hi, am I audible?
You have to speak a little louder.
Okay, am I more audible now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, so, okay, I'm gonna start in 3, 2, 1. Race Against the Fuels believes that the government's main role is to ensure the welfare of its people. And we believe that social welfare is a product of a fine balance of policies and technology that tackles both economic and environmental aspects. To ensure the economic growth and sustainable energy production, Race Against the Fuels builds off of the Daejeon Protocol and offers a holistic approach with a unique innovation governed by policies based on the Emfw Urban Nexus approach that focuses on the pillars of life, which is energy, food, water, and waste management. We also built off the principle of circular economy. Although there has been concern regarding our usage of solar energy, we explained that even though photovoltaic electrochemical cell efficiency is dependent on solar energy, it is not the only factor that affects the production of energy. And in the case of diminishing solar, a catalyst may be used to increase the production of this photovoltaic even during the diminishing of solar cells. Thus, even if the production is lower, it may be found another way to increase the production, as photovoltaic electrochemical cells are not reliant on the solar cells. Moreover, in regards to the diminishing solar irradiance because of the pollution itself, we believe that our other solutions regarding artificial photosynthesis and vertical farming as well will actually work in synergy to decrease the carbon emission as well as clear the pollution in question. This shows that the system integration that is proposed by our team as well is indeed an important aspect for the solutions to work as well. This also further proves that our solutions can adapt to different situations depending on the needs of the government and the needs of our citizens. Our provided policies strengthen our innovations such as artificial photosynthesis and vertical farming, as well as system integration to mitigate the issues such as, but not limited to, food security, sustainable energy production, effective waste management, air quality, as both societal and ecological aspect. We believe that throughout these policies and these technological advancements, we are able to bring a more sustainable and a more realistic approach for developing countries like Greenland in order to implement. We believe that implementation is the key towards a better sustainable society, which is why we provided the solutions that can be implemented in different social aspects and in different economic aspects of a country that is specifically tailored to Greenland. We believe and ecological aspect as well as the economic aspect are all three of them equally important to be considered upon the creation of both policies and innovations. Because of that, the Race Against the Fuels team thanks the other teams as well as the judges for the inputs that we receive, and we look forward to bring forward those inputs and create more tailored solutions in order to further explain our innovations. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your wonderful concluding remarks. And now we will have our concluding speech from a remaining team and US Student Union.
Thank you, esteemed judges and challenging opponents. With permission, I will begin our concluding remark proper. Balancing the relationship between economic growth and environmental protection is one of modern world's perennial problems that is deceptively straightforward but fraught with socio-economical and ethical issues in actuality. Even in 2020, when average temperature levels were rising and natural disaster becoming increasingly rampant across the globe, many countries were still pursuing sustained economic growth as one. Even as environmental protection and sustainability had become one of the key topics of focus, despite its status as a developing nation, Greenland attracted the scrutiny of environmental watchdogs that are quick to pull the nation into conferences for global cooperation to promote environmental protection. With international restrictions and potential backlash from its own inhabitants, Greenland is compelled to revamp its approach in economic development to accommodate demands for greater environmental considerations. Thus, we as Greenland's government introduced 4 core values: environmental sustainability, prosperity, justice, and global responsibility, which aims to thematize our strategies and policies. We have taken a holistic approach towards solving the crisis of the century for Greenland. Our team has considered the need for short-term and long-term policies to address our immediate symptoms and root causes for global warming. We looked at government budgeting and inequality in our first 2 policies, followed by well-being, food security, and health of our fellow Greenlanders. Lastly, we have put in place long-term policies like building an eco-friendly public transport, afforestation, educational restructuring, and the goal of becoming carbon neutral. This is furthermore supported by using science and technology to reform energy production and consumption shown in our innovations. Thank you to our esteemed judge, organizing committees, and our challenging opponents for the debate. We do understand that our policies and solutions might not be perfect, but we believe that our solutions, after receiving all the constructive feedback, will be able to bring the best for Greenland and bring them out of the dark days that they face today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before declaring this final session for today closed, I'd like to take a concluding remark from Professor To Chang Lee and Honorable Professor Yunjun Lee on how the participants took part in this debate and presented their ideas.
Okay, I'll keep it short. I enjoy the presentations and debate. Job well done and good luck.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, thank you everyone for preparing for such a great idea in debates. I really enjoyed listening to all of you and hope you have a good results after this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we're done. Thank you very much for participating. Take your time and devoting your time to come up with these brilliant ideas. May the best team win. All the best of luck for all of you. And this is it for today. The session is adjourned. Yeah, thank you. It was nice having you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you very
you.
much for your time and effort for this wonderful event. Thank you very much.